Hello and welcome to The Mucky Middle. I'm Nick Hunter, co-founder and CEO of B Corp creative agency Paper Moose. Today I'm very happy to have Karan Anand from financial disruptor Henry, who shares his journey from management consultant to managing director, and how he continues to embrace the challenges of building a purpose-led business while delivering value to customers. I hope you enjoy. Let's start with young Karan. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I think like most people of Indian origin, there was only ever one real choice when I was a kid, self-inflicted, which was to be a professional cricketer. My parents gave up on that dream when I was about 10, and I'd been playing cricket for about a year. So I gave up on it when I was about 16, which is unfortunate, but, probably made the right decision considering the kind of athletes those cricketers have turned out to be these days, and I was not.
Yeah.
I'm still not one.
Do you still watch it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so the dream of cricket, you had to move on from that.
Yeah.
What was next?
Depending on what you do, sort of late stage high school, and I've sort of always been a little bit mathematically inclined, you get introduced to financial markets and stuff, and you're like, oh man, those finance types make a lot of money, and you get into, I want to drive nice cars and I want to live in a nice house. And so for my sins, I went and studied actuarial studies and finance at university, trying to pursue that path. My maths was not as good as I thought it was. It's interesting how you think maths and you think numbers, but the more advanced you get in maths, the more you actually just need to be fluent in Greek and less fluent in actual numbers, because we didn't have calculators in our exams in university because, the calculation part is trivial. The actual complexity lies in the solving of complex equations, which is purely Greek letters.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, no, I can do the mental maths. Okay, I can't do this part well. But that was probably the next thing. I never actually took a job in finance. I worked in financial services as a consultant, but never worked there. So I probably corrupted myself a little bit too early. And then the rest of life has just been reformation from there.
Okay. And into Henry.
Yeah, that's right. So it was 10 years in management consulting or 13 years in management consulting, actually 10 years at Deloitte, with a few steps that I took out to do work on my own startups. But then, Henry's absolutely been the passion of mine for the last 2 years, and it's been such a great journey, such a great ride.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Henry?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we're an all-in-one service that solves the tax journey, if you will, for Australia and New Zealand self-employed. So with Henry, you get three things. One is the tax calculation and tax payment part. So if you're someone who's self-employed, your setup is different from a salary earner. With Henry, you get paid a gross amount of money by your client. Could be clients. And so what we'll do is you get paid into a Henry bank account, which we provision on your behalf. It's your money and the bank account is unique to you. You give that bank account to your clients. The money comes in. We will automatically calculate GST if relevant, income tax, Medicare levy, student loan. If you want to make a superannuation contribution, all that money is automatically allocated to those things. It goes off straight away to the ATO, your super fund, and the post-tax amount is remitted into your account immediately, and that process is automatic. So it's the first part. It's getting you on top of the inevitable tax bill you're going to get from the ATO before it happens. The second part is tools to help you do your self-employed job better. So the Henry app allows you to create quotes, invoices, upload business expenses and have them reviewed by our expert team, access reporting. And the final thing is we're also our customers' registered tax agents. So it's not just software, we actually do the lodgements for them. So we do the quarterly BAS returns. If relevant, we do the income tax return. If you get a nasty letter from the ATO, we handle it on your behalf. And so we do the payments part, we do the accounting software part, and we do the accounting lodgement part. And our philosophy is there's a huge component of fairness in the business. We don't charge a subscription fee, we charge a commission. So we take a 1% clip of all the payments that flow through Henry. That's capped at $1,500 a year. That's unlimited use of the service. The beauty of freelancing is if you're good enough, you could probably work 8 months a year and take the 4 months off traveling around the world. We don't believe you should be paying for a service when you're not using it.
Amazing. And how many customers are in Australia now?
We've signed up in excess of 20,000 customers here, and our rolling active customer count jumps in and around from a numbers perspective, just because of the nature of the freelancing work. But yeah, it's gone really, really well.
I mean, how many freelancers and contractors are in Australia?
From some of the estimates we've got from the ABS, the Bureau of Statistics, we think there's about 1.5 million self-employed people in Australia, and that's growing at about 50,000 a year.
And so you're the managing director of Henry.
Yep.
Yeah. What made you want to jump on board?
So a few things. I was at the point in my consulting career where you've really got to make a decision. Are you going to double down and be a partner representing the firm to industry, to a lot of clients? You have big sales targets on your back. And I really struggled to see the virtue of that role. You've really got to be passionate about banking transformation or insurance remediation. And I can see your eyes glazing over when I say those phrases, right? And I just couldn't see myself getting excited about those. So that was sort of the push factor. The pull factor was I loved the work I did. I was advising senior executives on matters of strategy, things that mattered to them and their businesses and their companies. But ultimately, if you peel back the work that you're doing as a strategy consultant, which I was, the only way the unit economics work is if you help rich people get richer. And I struggled with that at a existential philosophical level. And so I knew I wanted to move into something early stage because separate to this, I like the idea of being a part of a foundational business and being part of that close-knit early stage team who's basically battling against the world in defiance of the world, basically going, we're going to build this company or this organization when everyone tells us it will not succeed because the structures will not allow it to succeed. And as part of that, like the obvious leap off point for me was fintech because I was consulting in financial services. So that's the only logical space where I really could add any value in my sort of capacity. One of the decisions I'd made early on was I want to work at a fintech who is actually, there's tangibility. A lot of financial services is just people moving money around as middleware payment software, and you can't really explain what you do. And there's a big abstraction between the work you do and how it benefits a regular Joe. With Henry, you can absolutely see that. The work that we do, the value we provide to 2 million self-employed Aussies and Kiwis is real, it's tangible, it's giving them time back in their days, it's improving their lifestyles, it's improving national productivity. And that was one of the anchoring things for me going, every day I go to work, I create value for everyday Aussies, and I can go to sleep at night going, even if I did one thing today, it's helping the lives of so many people in the country get better. And like, really, what else do you want out of from your vocation, right?
Yeah, awesome. And Henry is, would you classify it as a scale-up at the moment?
Yeah, we're scale-up, yeah.
What part of the journey is it on?
Yeah, we're definitely a scale-up. So we just closed our Series B funding round. So we raised $35 million earlier this year, close to about $60 million in capital in total. We're about 90 staff, about 30-ish are here, and 60 are in Wellington, which is where we were founded. And it's definitely in that journey of, optimizing our customer acquisition funnel, working out how we serve our customers better and retain them for longer, and then how we make the unit economics work better. So questions you'd ask of a scale-up, not a startup, but we're well beyond the product market fit point of the journey.
And have you found jumping from, I guess, a management consultant peering into an organization versus actually managing an organization? It's
definitely not without its challenges, but I think I came into the journey head first knowing my long-term success will be determined by how scrappy I am at the start. But actually the hardest thing, I both love it and hate it at the same time, is the context switching, right? You've got to be across 15 to 20 topics on any given day, and they range from everything from finance to operations to marketing to the different types of marketing to people management to stakeholder relations and everything in between. And your day would be the same, Nick. It's in 30-minute blocks. Yeah. If at best, it's probably in 15-minute blocks.
10, 15. Yeah.
That's right. And they're all absolutely different topics. And while you're having the meetings, you're getting a stream of Slack messages from different threads on different topics going, I need to respond to that now because I'm the blocker from that thing going ahead. There's a purity to any vocation where you're just executing the craft. I'm sure you have it here with some of your designers and videographers and photographers and whoever they are. They can execute their craft without having to think about the management bureaucracy. But as soon as you're in that, you're just one thing after the next. And you go, well, how do I create value? Like, I don't actually really know. I just know I attend a lot of meetings all day. And
I do a hell of a lot of Slack messages.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I schedule a lot of Slack messages to be respectful of people's work hours.
Yes. To come in just at 9 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're continuously switching gears now across a much wide, and I guess also managing people.
Yeah.
Is that quite different now?
I think given the nature of a cross-functional business, which is what Henry is, you get people from all sorts of backgrounds doing all sorts of work. And so the difficulty is I can't manage you or performance measure you or incentivize you or motivate you based on a similar set of rules or a similar set of ambition. Like,
so you've had to moderate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's an easier sell job when you can tell them the kind of impact you create on people's lives. We're still at that journey where people are joining the business, and we certainly hire for that. Going, do you have a visceral connection with our mission? Do you feel the pain that self-employed people in Australia feel?
Your role, you describe yourself as kind of very customer focused and customer experience, brand. Like, how does the brand come in?
So the heavy lifting around the brand perspective comes from, yes, we must take our work seriously. We're handling your money and we're dealing with all your tax requirements from an ATO perspective. But that's the limiting factor. It's not the enabling factor, right? So it comes from very much that the brand is very much about being fresh, about being engaged, about being an advocate for the self-employed, because it's a segment of the economy which is just overlooked. There is actually no cohering organization or body or literature associated with the self-employed. We're genuinely just looking at it from this perspective. And so because there's no advocacy, there's also no self-realization that I have agency as someone who's part of a group of 1.5 million Australians, which is actually 70% of all small businesses in Australia. And so a lot of the work we do from a brand perspective is around giving them confidence that actually you being self-employed is something to be proud of, and that you have an advocate on your side, which is us, that we make the experience of financial admin, which is boring as hell, something that's like really easy for you to do, and that you can have a lot of fun with us doing it throughout the process.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I love working with challenger brands in these types of spaces because you can be quite disruptive in the way that you communicate. You have to still appear like the industries that you're stealing from, but at the same time, you can disrupt it and look different enough.
Yeah.
And behave in slightly different ways. You talked before when you were employing people, you often look for that sort of mission and vision alignment. Yeah. What is the vision of Henry?
So it's to help the world of self-employment easier for everyone who chooses to enter self-employment. So one thing we know is true is that there is a general movement across the world. And so we do some independent polling ourselves. It's called the Henry Sole Trader Pulse. It's sort of a quarterly index that we run across Australia and New Zealand of the sentiments of this segment of the market. And a few things we've learned there is that consistently the same thing that we hear from people, which is more than 70% of people who are self-employed by choice. And that's really important, right? So you go, well, because there's this perception that it's like, oh, like you're contracting or you're freelancing because you're in between jobs. And that's part of the thing we want to break. And so if you come at it from one is, do you believe that work can and should be moved in a way where individuals have more agency about how they earn money? If the candidate believes in that principle, then you go, great. Then you level it up going, well, let's think about the basis of self-employment. For many people, it's actually a form of self-actualization. And for the candidates, so we'll give this sales pitch in the early part of the recruitment process. If we see their eyes light up, you go, okay, you might be one of us, right? And if you're like, oh, that's interesting. So what are my work hours like? It's like, to be clear, we work very, very fair hours. Everyone goes home at 5. But if that's the next question, you're kind of missing the point, right?
Yeah. So you want those passionate advocates for the customers that you're
totally.
You're
and
with. Yeah.
It does come from personal experiences. They've watched their family members and their friends struggle with this problem, and they go, "Oh man, this company solves this problem. I'd love to be part of the story."
Yeah, interesting. In the early days of Paper Moose, we we had this thing called Moose Bank, and it was essentially what Henry is. So all of our freelancers were kind of permilancers, and we would sort of, you'd define how much you wanted to get paid each week, and you'd do a bunch of jobs with us, and it would sort of bank up in the Moose Bank, so we'd sort of distribute it across a period of months. So it was an artificial way of creating the sense of being employed by the business and also not getting whacked on every single job of, a huge amount of tax.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting way of sort of managing those early days
really
in
cool.
growth.
And that would have been a bit of work for you guys to get that up and running.
It was. I mean, not me. Josh basically taught himself.
That's cool. I mean, a lot of what we talk about is letting out, and it would have been the same with you guys, having our customers, have your cake and eat it too, right? So it's like you get the freedom of freelancing in your case, but then you get the sense of security, but also you feel part of the tribe or part of the, whatever you call yourselves, moose crew.
Yeah. It was the herd.
The herd, okay. That would make more sense.
Yeah. And so there's 30 of you now. So, and you were employee number one.
Yep.
And were you part of choosing that 30? Like,
I've been part of most of it. The way the business is structured now is that we're sort of functionally aligned. And so, we basically got the same functions in Australia as we do in New Zealand. And we're sort of just hiring the best capability that we can find in either market.
And you'll share those resources?
And we'll share those resources. It's mostly, it's the customer facing teams where we feel the need to localize, just idiosyncrasies, accent, time zone, which is important. But product, engineering, marketing, it's wherever we can find the best person for this role, we will hire them in. Everyone will have a sort of a dotted line to me who works in the Sydney office.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I'll be part of the recruitment process in some shape or form, mostly just being wheeled out to give the pitch that self-employment is like self-actualization. Come join our Maslow's spiritual hierarchy.
You're the cult leader.
Yeah, well, you said it, not me.
Hey, it's okay, I'm a cult leader. Culture.
Okay.
How important is culture for Henry?
Really important, right? And it's one of those things which you'd be familiar with, given your role. It can be very trite in terms of what you say. So the best culture is the lived culture. We work hard and go home on time. It's 5:30. Why are you still in the office? Get out of the office, right? That's really important to say those things. We think fairness is important, and we think ensuring that people are paid the right amount of money and that's not biased by gender is super important. So we run a very strict pay parity scheme. If you are at a certain level in the organization, you and your peers are paid the same amount. We have a lot of fun and we joke around. And so there's things, rituals we'll do internally to create an environment where people feel comfortable to laugh and to call people out. The last thing is probably making sure that everyone is deeply connected to the customer problem we're solving, right? So there's a lot of work happening on that at the moment because we know as we scale, we just hire more and more people who are not customer facing. And so there's a challenge around how do you make sure that they're feeling the empathy of our customers. So it's making sure that all the work that we do links to an outcome which matters to the business, and it's tied to a customer, and it could be an internal customer problem, right? Because even our engineers, their customers are our customer facing staff. But if the work you're doing is not attributable and you can't show that in the next fortnight, in the next sprint, you're not delivering value for a customer, then you have to step back, and it's the role of a product owner to go, well, why are you doing this work? Let's switch to something which is going to create more meaningful impact.
Yeah, interesting. And in terms of, I guess, purpose, Henry has a very clear purpose to the sole trader and the contractor. How important is that in terms of your recruitment?
It's pretty important. I think for the nature of the roles that we employ for, it's incredibly important. For those customer facing roles, it's really important. There's a cohort of people who are now coming in, given that we've got a little bit more publicity. We're getting a lot of interest from people who they want to work in a genuine disruptor. And that was one of the reasons that attracted me to Henry. It's such a bastardized word, but in its classical definition, a disruptive company is one that uses technology to create a business model around a customer segment that the existing economic model will not facilitate, right? So professional services accounting firms cannot scale in this segment of the market because they can't make enough money out of it because humans do the work. And so we use tech, which is what our engineers and product team work on, to deliver a highly automated and a highly seamless service And so we do get people who come in going, I want to work on like a disruptor who's genuinely not is a disruptor, not because they decided to call themselves that.
Yeah. And I guess, how do you find balancing, I guess, being a purpose-driven organization as well as being profitable?
I think we have the benefit where it's not something that we have to consciously balance, because one thing is there's already an existing value of exchange which exists in the industries we play in between payments facilitators, accounting software providers, and accountancy. But the second thing is the way we position it going is that is the pricing, is the service proposition, is the service delivery, is it fair? And if it's fair, then the burden is on us to create a profitable business model that sits behind it, right?
Yeah.
And because we lead with that, 1% fee, there's nothing hidden in there. We're not, gonna, oh, by the way, we're gonna charge you for this other thing that was in your terms and conditions, but we didn't actually tell you. It's none of that, right? If we're charging for something separate, like you want a separate bit of accountancy advice, or you've come in and you've got a backlog of tax returns you haven't done for the last few years, we'll charge you for that. But that's explicitly outside the scope, right, of the service. But we're not going to do it for you and then send you an invoice that we did it. It's like, hey, by the way, you have outstanding tax returns. As a tax agent, it's our obligation to tell you. If you'd like us to do it, we'll charge you for it, right? So I don't think it's something we consciously think of. We're actually quite proud of how we facilitate that balance. And frankly, there are times where we're going, man, that customer's getting a lot of value for the few Uber trips they did during the year. And we did their tax return in exchange for it. Obviously, I've worked at other organizations where the mindset is sort of different, going, how can we make more money out of existing customers, it's generally, makes a lot of people wealthy, but it's a bit of a gut-wrenching approach to business.
Yeah, you're really focused on a really equal transaction rather than, I guess, squeezing as much value out of the customer as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see a part of AI playing in the business in the future?
Yeah, totally. And it's sort of something which is I think very topical to everyone right now, but us in particular. A lot of it is in the back office. There are some customer facing elements, like how does it enhance the ability of us to present the right information to customers at the right time. Obviously, they're asking us questions on a whole array of topics. So we use Intercom, which is our customer communications tool. There is some chatbot functionality in there which we use, but they're rolling out their own AI version of it, which we'll be doing some early testing to see how can that enhance the customer support journey, enhance our customer support agents. But then even behind the scenes, things like, machine learning to recognize whether a receipt is valid, the processing of that receipt, flagging transactions to our risk team, things like how we speed up payment processing, identifying areas where there might be breakages in that long flow, the automation of tax returns, all those things, machine learning, AI driven, computation driven. So it's going to play a huge part. I'm sure you guys are thinking about it as well.
Oh yeah. We've integrated with a lot of our, just like a lot of the low level churny tasks, and it saves heaps of time. So, it allows us to focus on the things that are important and the craft.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the challenges of sort of shifting from consultant to manager of the business in Henry.
Yeah, I think the first thing you sort of take for granted when you've done one thing for a long, long time is you rely so much on your instincts to guide you. And it's very hard. Like, how do you describe instincts to someone? How do you describe instincts to someone who is junior to you in your profession? And you can't explain it. You can only observe it. And you sort of see it in meetings and how you guide conversations and how you decide what the next port of action is, or how you walk someone down a particular path just because you want to prove to them that that's the wrong path, but it is, but you got to take them on that journey. I came here and I didn't have those instincts per se. One good thing that management consulting does set you up for is building things from base logic. And that's the thing that I had to rely on, right? But it was basically relearning those instincts. So I feel like I'm getting to a point now where that's better now, when someone will go, hey, what about this idea? And I may not have heard about it, but you can sort of trace through going, but will it meet this objective faster, and who's actually going to do it, and where are the resources going to sit, and when will it deliver value, and when would we, and blah, blah, blah. You can trace all those things through the different functions of the business quite quickly in your head. Whereas initially I'm like, I don't know who does what.
Yeah, sure.
So therefore I don't know. I can't qualify whether this, on the surface of it, it does sound like a good idea, but actually, an idea is not worth anything unless it can be executed in a business. And what you learn over time is, how does the business execute and operate things? So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, I think we touched on it earlier, which is just people management in a very different context. Is, it's not like, if you're a director in a consulting firm, anyone who reports beneath you, the implicit position is that for as long as you're here, you need to be a copy of me. And you need to be a copy of me at every single level in the hierarchy. And so therefore I'm training you to be a clone of me, going,
wow,
I did this when I was a manager, you're a senior consultant. For you to get to manager, you need to be doing this because that's what I did. I can't do that here. That's not what we're building for, right?
Yeah, interesting.
And so you have to go and basically learn what the capabilities and the career points of someone's hierarchy is, but also noting that the only way you succeed in your career is by being promoted, which is a really toxic way to build a culture. It's a great way to organize people around the scheme that they run, but we can't do that. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, because you want specialists.
You want people to just to run their own race, right? Like, if you're happy doing the thing you're doing for the salary that you're earning, like, you do you, man. Like, who am I to tell you, you should be thinking about getting promoted in 12 months. If you do want that, then there's also a place for you here. But I don't feel that, it's, if you want to hire a truly diverse, inclusive workplace, you got to let people run their own race.
Is that the most challenging thing, is actually now having to deal with very different mindsets of people?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, but we're better for it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because you just get better ideas. You actually just get a much more authentic place of work.
Is the brand and marketing quite different from New Zealand and Australia?
It's not. It's not at the highest level. We sort of still use the same sort of ethos and the same heuristics in the brand. I think what's starting to change now is, so testimonials are different because we want to use local customers and local dialects and accents. As our marketing organization grows, we're starting to get a lot more focused on persona-based activation. And so we're focused on different personas. It's the same personas at the highest level, but the focus is different across the two markets.
Yeah. Because your customer mix would be, I presume, a little bit different from New Zealand? For example, the NDIS.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. So that's what we call the umbrella persona around that, which is health and wellness.
Yeah.
That's our biggest vertical here. It's probably our third or fourth biggest in New Zealand.
Yeah, wow.
Our home in New Zealand is, because we're Wellington-based government town, it's white-collar contractors. That's our home there, right? So that's our biggest segment there. But we're a scale company. I think we're now the largest accountancy in New Zealand by number of customers.
Wow.
Something like the vanity metric we use is 1% of the entirety of New Zealand's income tax bill flows through Henry accounts. You're welcome, New Zealand government.
And what's the goal for Australia?
It's to get to that in a quicker amount of time. At the current rate of growth, the New Zealand business is still sort of 3 or 4 times bigger than us, but at the same stages of the journey, we've been able to less than halve the time to the same point in active customers or revenue. And so the challenge in the scaling phase for us now is that, can we replicate that trajectory?
Yeah. And in terms of, I guess, Henry's purpose, how important do you think that is to the consumer? Probably
not as much as we think it matters. I think by and large, they're just looking for the problem to go away, right? And it's a big problem, and it's not a problem you can bury your head in the sand of, because, the tax man will find you. So we talk about sort of 3 aspects: simple, accessible, and affordable, right? So I think all those three things will resonate. But as it pertains to the ethos of advocates for the self-employed, not as much. I think they connect with probably the base level proposition with the base level purpose rather that we're trying to fulfill. But are they going to quantify that at the highest level and think about national productivity? No.
Yeah,
and we'd never expect that. I'd love it, but I'm gonna manage my own expectations, right?
Yeah, 100%. And do you find a lot of people, like a lot of your sales, are driven by recommendations of the product?
Yeah, particularly in the home market, word of mouth is more than 40% now in New Zealand. Over here, it's about 1 in 5, so it's quite good. It's getting there.
And in terms of the brand and marketing, like you're talking about building the full funnel, like that's not your traditional wheelhouse. How have you found that?
Oh man, it's been a huge learning journey for me. So thankfully, like I've had the opportunity to work quite closely with our marketing team. And then it's been quite a bit of tutelage from our founders as well, who have themselves sort of self-taught marketing people. But our CEO and co-founder, James Fuller, who's sort of much more connected to the day-to-day marketing organization now. You know, I've just spent a lot of time sort of watching him engage with the marketing team and therefore learned a little bit myself along the way. And then our marketing team is just a very good collection of people who are specialists at what they do, from SEO to content to brand to customer engagement. And then over time, what happens is, you know, what's that design framework, from mystery to heuristics, you start to build your own level of heuristic going, but why are we spending so much money in that month? And why are we spending so much money in this channel? And how do you know that that campaign is going to deliver? Like, what is the test you put in place to prove to you that that campaign is going to deliver on what we think it's going to deliver? But then at the same time, you don't want to coach the marketing team in a position where they get too defensive going, I'm only ever going to do things which have attributable ROI. It's like, at what point do you just take a punt and go, okay, we're just going to go for this?
I can imagine, particularly like brand campaigns, must be a very difficult concept for you to wrangle with, because it doesn't have a clear connection always. I mean, you can see a spike in your search and all of these kind of things.
That's right. Yeah. And that's just not just me. That's a challenge.
Oh, no, totally.
Executive and board level, right? Because that's the sort of thing you got to sign off multi-million-dollar spends. That's a board decision.
Yeah. What's my return going to be on this?
Yeah, exactly. And when do I see the return? And it's like, oh, you'll see it in 6 months. It's like, but so do I sit here at month 5.5 and go, where's my return?
Yeah.
Why hasn't it come yet?
Or it might be 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. So
it might take 3 years of consistent spend. So.
We went pretty hard last year. We absolutely saw the benefits of that in New Zealand. I think here we did, but not as much. But obviously it's a case of, you have to tell the story a number of times. And then so we're taking learnings from that. And we've got specific windows where it makes sense to run campaigns, new
end of financial year.
That's right.
You got a campaign coming out soon, I presume.
In New Zealand, it's running right now. In Australia, it's in the planning and shooting phase at the moment. And that's when we'll go hard, which is not surprising.
No.
And then you can really measure the effectiveness of that against other control samples in other months of the year for obvious reasons.
But the product of Henry, the customer is using that all through the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess you guys have an opportunity to disrupt that end of financial year cycle a little bit.
Yeah. So the marketing is always on.
Yeah.
And so we just ramp it up and we put specific campaigns around it. And we don't actually run end of financial year as we do start of financial year campaigns, because it's just, you kind of got to go to where the customer is mentally, right? And they think about their accounting relationship as a new financial year ticks over. No one's sitting on Christmas Day thinking about, oh man, this accounting software. Actually, it's funny. We actually run internal little sweepstakes around how many signups do you think we're going to get on Christmas every year.
Really?
Yeah.
And what's been the average?
I think actually this year, 2022, I think we had 16 signups on Christmas Day. Yeah, which is surprising and
a little bit sad.
Very sad.
Yeah.
But hey, we're moving away from the British heritage. So
that's true. That's
for
true.
my family, it's just a free day off, right?
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. I guess we've talked a lot about the customer. How are you remaining relevant to the customer? Like you've already got a world-changing product.
Yeah.
How are you always going to be sort of on that front foot?
I think one of the big challenges we're trying to solve for now is how does Henry, the product for sole traders, become more relevant at a work type or vocational level, right? So if I take the example of the NDIS independent support worker, they are legally self-employed or a sole trader. It's not what they're thinking about or proud of or considering in terms of their own identity on any given day. They see themselves as a carer, a support worker. And so for the part of their journey that we have carriage or responsibility of, which is the financial admin part, they want to engage with us in terms of what does it mean for me doing all this stuff as an independent support worker or a carer. Yeah. We could use the language of sole trader, and we do, but it doesn't viscerally connect with them. But if you look at it from that perspective, then a lot of them who come in, they come in because, the marketplace platform that they're using, like a Mabel, makes gross payments, and someone who also uses Mabel told them, hey, I use Mabel with Henry, so you should use Henry too. And so that when they come in, rather than them asking us, we should be able to identify going, hey, you're a support worker. Do you by any chance use Mabel? Because if so, here's a 5-step guide on how to get set up with Mabel and Henry.
Make it easy.
Make it easy for them. So those sorts of things.
So building out these very deep niches of customer experiences.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting, like we would put that under, again, the health and wellness persona, but we're not really engaging with those customers at a wellness level. They don't identify with wellness. Whereas with tradies, it doesn't matter if I'm a carpenter or a plumber, I'm a tradie, right? And so I identify with the parent.
Yeah, they have that strap line on themselves.
Yeah. And so it's just getting smarter around that. And that then flows through the whole acquisition funnel right through to the whole service journey as well. And that's kind of where we're at as a business, is just thinking about the whole company as a set of, different customer journeys, and then making sure that the product and the service proposition is really tied to those journeys, not so, tied to what we deem a sole trader's journey should be.
Interesting. So what's been your favorite moment since jumping into the seat of Henry?
Oh, that's a great question. End of last year, we were able to bring the whole company together. So at that time, the 20-ish people in Australia were able to fly over to Wellington. And the celebration was we just crossed, I think a month or two before that, $1 billion processed through Henry accounts since we'd been active as a company. Wow. And we had we'd booked out a private room with they'd set up this little casino for all the staff. And then after that sort of evening, we moved into a big dinner thing where all the partners of the people working in the Wellington office came as well. And there must have been, with all the partners and friends, not friends, partners and some investors, there must have been 100 plus people in the room. Just the overwhelming feeling of this is a thing, we built this. It's this big, and this is just the invited people who love us who decided to show up on this night. And, I'm dressed in shorts and thongs today. This is my daily attire, but that was we decided to do suit and tie. And so everyone was decked out really well. It was such a heartwarming, proud moment that this has really grown up to be a substantive business, which is paying the salaries for so many people and impacting directly the families of so many people. I'm sure you've had those moments at Paper Moose. It's those times where you really sit back and go, I'm so proud to be part of this journey.
Yeah, I had an employee come back from the States last weekend, and he was one of our early. He was an intern and became a producer, it was really heartwarming to sort of hear him say how foundational that experience was, because you do sometimes forget in the day-to-day working through putting out fires and doing all these things, actually how much impact you have as a business owner around the lives around you. It's good to remember that.
Totally. Yeah. And long may they continue.
Yes, long may they continue. And you said you're in shorts and thongs today. That's a bit of a shift from your management consultant days.
Oh yeah. I do not miss that at all. Now,
what else has changed in your work-life balance?
Yeah, I think from obviously an attire perspective, I much prefer this. I'm from Darwin originally, so wearing shorts and thongs is not really something I'm not accustomed to. But just from just a mental perspective, definitely go home at a much more reasonable time. But I think about work more, right? So Like, it irritates my wife. First thing I do when I wake up on Saturday morning is check Friday's numbers and update my own tracking spreadsheet on, how we went on Friday, which is a ritual I do every morning. And because Friday's a payments day and a business day, I have to update it on Saturday. And, I'm still, when I get some spare time on weekends, I'm looking at charts and I'm looking at, projections and sort of planning out my week, because it then becomes an obsession, right? It's not just a job. But it's not at a point where it's overriding or anything, but there's that blur between when you really love what you do, it doesn't feel like work anymore, right?
Yeah, that's right. It verges on the unhealthy, but what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? It's like, so sue me. I'm having fun all the time.
Yeah. It's not work. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes, I'm incredibly stressed, but I love it.
That's right. What else would I do?
Yeah. How do you deal with stress?
I try so the first thing is I try for it to not actually enter my realm, right? I think that's the first way of dealing with it, is don't get
cut it off at the pass.
Yeah, cut it off at the pass. I mean, like, I'm a Sikh. I'm a practicing Sikh. A lot of the philosophical underpinnings are tied to a lot of Eastern philosophy, which is around general detachment to worldly things, and so that's how we sort of approach life. In that, like, you're passing through this period of your conscious existence in the world. Enjoy the ride. You may have been dealt a good hand. You may have been dealt a bad hand. That's literally out of your control. I am very fortunate that I have the parents and the family I had who, at some point when I was very young, migrated to Australia. All of that was out of my control. 98% of the things that have happened to me was because I was born in the family I was. And so I'm just enjoying the ride. But every single movie I've watched has been better because there was a big complication in the plot. And to your point around adversity, like, if the work here is a grind and it's difficult and I have bad days, when you achieve something which is meaningful, it's only meaningful because you have to grind through it, right?
Yeah.
And so I absolutely don't embrace stress, but it's more like things are happening for a purpose and a reason. And if you're always in a learning mindset, you'll hopefully come out of it at the back end going, man, I'm glad I went through that experience, because the next time it pops up, I'm just going to be so much better at it.
Yeah, 100%. Any advice that you'd give to your younger self?
I think I probably was a little bit too risk averse when I was younger. I did have a crack at a couple of startups, but I sort of ended up working part-time at Deloitte, doing the startup part-time, and I was always I was half in on both things. And you know this, right? You couldn't have part-timed Paper Moose to what it is today.
First couple of years I was pulling beers, but
yeah, right. But to where it is now, right? You had, at some point you have to
commit.
You have to commit. And I think the benefits of living in a place like Australia, we've got such a strong safety net around us, let alone from a government perspective, just from a society perspective and an employment perspective. Like, you would be a fool in today's day and age to not roll the dice in your 20s. I did, but I rolled one dice, not both of them, right? And I wish I'd actually done it properly. I think where I've landed, I'm very happy with, but could have done a little bit differently. But there is a family and a heritage thing as well. Like, you're child of migrant parents or a migrant yourself. Risk appetite is very different.
Yeah, interesting.
And only when I got to this point where you get to the realm where you get to a point in your career where your parents can't really advise you on the next steps because they haven't experienced it yourself. You just got to go, just trust me.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. And the worst case, I literally will walk back into that job in 2 years' time.
Yeah. What were their feelings of you jumping across to Henry?
I mean, there was a big dangle of a carrot of a partnership at a Big Four. It's pretty hard for like Asian parents to turn around and say, yeah, don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And which I was telling them, going, I don't want to do it. But in the end, they're like, look, we've always trusted you. We're going to trust you on this as well.
Yeah. You are your own man.
Yeah.
Awesome, Karan. Well, thank you for having a chat to us in the Paper Moose HQ bunker. It's been a pleasure.
It's been so much fun. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Nick.
Pleasure, man.
Thank you everyone for listening to The Mucky Middle. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having the conversation. And if you did, then drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you happen to be listening. We'll see you next month for another episode, but in the meantime, we hope you'll keep walking that fine line between profit and our planet.
The Mucky Middle is a Paper Moose production. Music and sound mix by Caleb Jacobs.